But the goal is to reach some sort of middle ground in there. Israelis see it as the war of independence. Their narrative goes that, we declared our own country and we were attacked. We were attacked by foreign Arab armies that came in and invaded and tried to drive us into the sea. And there's some truth to those, some really nasty rhetoric. We don't want these Jews taking over our country during this time. But on the other side, on the Palestinian side and the Arab side, they see it as, well, we were here in our country and all these Jewish immigrants came in and they basically drove us out of our country. And in Arabic it's called the Nakba, the catastrophe. And so it's a little bit of a different. There's a little bit of truth in both sides of the stories, but in the middle, where do we get this? There are some fundamental facts that we need to know about the outcomes of the war for you. Number one, the state of Israel was created. And it's the state of Israel that Israelis, Jewish Israelis, now they're not Zionists anymore, now they're officially Israelis, they feel threatened because they've been attacked by the Arab world. And they're going to get attacked several more times. They feel like there's an existential threat, and they want the rest of the world to accept them and not attack them, and be secure from those and not be attacked anymore. That's a fundamental fact that Israel has created. Also it's created during this time is the land of Palestine is divided, and Israel is created out of 78%. They win a lot of that land in the war. The remaining 22% is what we see on the map as the West Bank, which looks like a kidney bean, and the little Gaza Strip that's down there on the coast to the south. And also, right smack dab in the middle of it is Jerusalem, which is divided into Arab East Jerusalem, where the holy sites are, and Israeli West Jerusalem. So what happened to the Palestinian Arab population that was in that 78% of mandatory Palestine? Well, most of them were driven out. Israelis might say they just left their homes. The reality is, if you go back to the Israeli military archive, a lot of them fled the fighting and were forcibly expelled. How many of them? Over 700,000. The International Committee of the Red Cross says 720,000 documented. And the UN and the Red Cross became responsible for the refugees. Where did they go? Everywhere. North to Lebanon, to the West Bank, down to Gaza, to Egypt, to Jordan, scattered all across the world. There's even some a Palestinian-Japanese family, because the guy went up and worked in Japan. So for Palestinians, this idea that, hey, we were driven out of our homeland and we want to return is a very powerful idea called the right of return. And supposedly refugees who are not violent or anything should be allowed to return. There's a problem, though, because in order for Israel to be a Jewish state, it has to have a Jewish majority. And so these refugees were not allowed to return because Israel wanted to create a state for Jewish people. And immediately after the war, they invited all Jewish people to come in and live there and make it their state. However, these people who had lived there were not allowed to return. And also, some 400 Palestinian villages that were empty this way were bulldozed. So this is an issue that is very emotional. It's not even on the table right now. But not all of the Palestinian Arabs were driven out of Israel when it was created. To this day, 20% of Israel's population itself is Israeli Arab. These are actually just Palestinians who stayed in the state of Israel and eventually got Israeli citizenship. To make a long story short, they're seen as third-class citizens. Even though they're right where they've lived for centuries, they do not have necessarily equal rights, and they're discriminated, which is another issue. And so, I'm going to very quickly run through a little bit more of the history and bring it to modern times. There are going to be several more wars that I'm going to gloss over. Wars where Israel attacks Arab countries, wars where Arab countries attack Israel. But the one more war besides the war that we need to know to understand this conflict is the war of War of 1967, Israel conquered that kidney bean-shaped West Bank and the Gaza Strip, and also some other lands from other Arab countries. What's different about the War of 67 is although there are a few refugees, most of the Palestinian population in Gaza and in the West Bank stayed in place. So this is what we call the occupation. Since 1967, for the past 40-some years, Israel has ruled over these areas with their military. It is a military dictatorship. It is Israelis ruling over a Palestinian population. Today, there are about 3.5 million Palestinians living in the West Bank and about 1.5 million living in the Gaza Strip. The situation in Gaza changed a little bit in 2005, but I have to wait until I get there, if we get there. So, after a while, the idea that the Arabs were going to get rid of this colonial imposed Jewish population in Israel, and we're going to drive them into the sea, or that wasn't going to happen. That didn't work. When Egypt signed the peace accords in the late 70s, that pretty much meant the end of any big Arab assault on Israel. Although there's still some conflicts, Israel wasn't under as much of an existential threat anymore. Palestinians in the late 80s, they went toward a two-state solution. Rather than saying that, this is all our land and we should be able to live wherever. They said, okay, we'll agree to have our own state in this 22% of the West Bank, the Gaza Strip, and East Jerusalem. And we still want the right of return, but we'll accept Israel as a state. And, that would be the peace. This is what we call the two-state solution. And if things had stayed static in the past 40 years, it would be rather easy to accomplish that kind of solution. What has changed in the past 40 years? Yes? Take a snap. Wow, any welcomes. I'll take any welcomes. You can shout it out.
The rise of Iran. The rise of Iran.
Rise of Iran. Right now, Iran's a pretty hot issue. Actually, historically, Iran and Israel actually cooperated a lot. But now they're not very friendly. Lebanon, there was a long Israeli war in Lebanon that had to do at first with Palestinians who were there, and Israelis stayed longer for a long time. But, Lebanon wasn't the thing that changed it. Settlers, thank you. At first, after the War of 67, the first settlers were religious fanatics. And, they said, well, this is our holy land, and we have a right to go live here, because this is our land that God gave us. And some of the most extreme settlers that even Israelis don't like, are these religious fanatics. But, in the past 40 years, the settlements have grown and grown and grown. How does settlements work? Land is taken by the army, or settlers go out and take it themselves. And usually it starts with what we would call a mobile home. A few mobile homes get together at the top of the hill, and all of a sudden it has water service from the Israeli government, and a road is built, and electrical service, and stuff like that. So throughout the West Bank, all these settlements have grown over the past 40 years, and it's grown increasingly. A lot of settlers now are not there because they're religious and they think God gave them this land. They went there because they got a sweetheart deal. Somebody said, okay, you move to this place, which you don't even know is a settlement. It just looks like a nice subdivision. You don't want to live here. It's nice. It's got all this stuff. We'll give you a really nice mortgage. And we'll give you a cash bonus. So a lot of people move there. Today, there are some 500,000, half a million settlers in the West Bank and East Jerusalem. About 200,000 are in East Jerusalem. So throughout the West Bank are all these little settlements everywhere, and it makes things very difficult because the settlements are then protected by the Israeli military, who also impose checkpoints throughout the West Bank, not just between Jewish areas and Arab Palestinian areas, but throughout. And then you have roads that cut through that go directly to these settlements that if you're Arab and you live in the West Bank, and you have a green license plate, you're not allowed to drive on it. And if you drive on it, you'll probably get stopped by the border police or the Israeli military. So these settlements are a huge problem. If we're going to have a two-state solution, something has to be done about these settlements.